This is a Tu-160. It is currently the fastest, heaviest, and most heavily armed bomber in the world. It is also the largest variable sweep-wing aircraft ever built. The Tu-160 has a maximum takeoff weight of 275 tons. It is powered by 4 Kuznetsov NK32 turbofan engines. Each engine can provide up to 25 tons of thrust. This enormous aircraft can exceed speeds of over twice the speed of sound. This speed is faster than most fighter jets. Russian President Putin is also a loyal fan of the Tu-160. On August 6, 2005, Putin inspected the Russian long-range aviation. He got to fly the White Swan. During the flight, he reached a maximum speed of 1.5 Mach. Putin requested to speed up the modernization of the Tu-160. A year later, the first fully upgraded Tu-160 entered service with the Russian Air Force. When talking about the Tu-160, one cannot avoid mentioning the American B-1EB. These two bombers are very similar in many designs. The Tu-160 is like a larger version of the B-1EB. The debate over which one copied the other continues to this day. So today, let's discuss the birth of the Tu-160. The Soviet Union's first supersonic bomber dates back to 1950. At that time, the Soviet Union was in fierce competition with the United States in military weaponry. The development of jet aircraft and anti-aircraft missiles was rapid. When the U.S. began developing the B-58 supersonic strategic bomber, the Soviets felt pressure to keep up with the U.S. They proposed in 1952 to develop a supersonic bomber capable of carrying nuclear bombs. Several domestic research institutes participated in the design work, including the Tupolev Design Bureau. The Tu-22 was created in this context. As the first supersonic bomber of the Soviet Union, the Tu-22's performance did not satisfy the military. With a full tank and payload, it couldn't achieve supersonic flight. Its range was only about 3,000 kilometers. It was quite inadequate. Besides the Tu-22, Tupolev also designed the Tu-108 intercontinental supersonic concept plane. This aircraft could take off from the Soviet Union, bomb the U.S., and return. After several years of research, this concept evolved into the more sci-fi-shaped Tu-135 project. But by the late 1950s, the MIM-14 missile and F-106 supersonic interceptor entered service in the United States. This combination was enough to handle any supersonic bomber. Thus, the Soviet Union decided to temporarily shelve the supersonic bomber project. However, the technical foundations of these projects were kept for future needs. Until Khrushchev stepped down in 1964. The newly elected Soviet leaders decided it was time to upgrade the Air Force. Based on the Cuban Missile Crisis experience, they aimed for stronger strategic bombers to counterbalance the United States. At the same time, the United States was also active. They began the Advanced Manned Strategic Aircraft Program in 1965. Abbreviated as AMSA, this was the development of the Bonia. This news made Soviet leaders extremely anxious. They worried about an imbalance of military power between the two countries. Thus, the Soviet Air Force launched a new bomber program right away. The aircraft was required to carry various weapons. It needed intercontinental strike capabilities. The range had to exceed 15,000 kilometers. It should achieve high-altitude supersonic cruise. Its maximum speed needed to be close to 3 times the speed of sound. Additionally, it had to have low-altitude penetration capability and good short takeoff and landing ability. Meeting so many demands on the same aircraft is truly unrealistic. The initial research for this plan alone took several years. However, creating a supersonic bomber capable of nearly 3 Mach speeds with the technology of the time was impractical. The Soviet Air Force had to lower the technical requirements. They reduced it to a maximum speed of 2 Mach, and the range was also shortened. The Sukhoi Design Bureau submitted 2 proposals. The Myasishchev Design Bureau also provided its own design proposal. Ultimately, in 1975, this important task was entrusted to the Tupolev Design Bureau, known for its extensive bomber manufacturing experience. By this time, the American Bonia had already completed its first flight. To catch up, the Soviet Air Force required this new aircraft to surpass the Bonia in every aspect. To meet the high technical demands of this aircraft, the Tupolev Design Bureau abandoned its previous conservative design approach and boldly adopted new technologies. It began collaborating with nearly 800 other research institutions, design bureaus, and production factories. The aerodynamic design of the fuselage alone was studied with the Central Institute of Aerodynamics for over a dozen configurations. They ultimately chose a configuration called a lifting body, which merges the wing and fuselage. Not only do the wings provide lift, but the fuselage does as well. Using this design allows the aircraft to more effectively utilize airflow, reducing radar and infrared signatures. There is also more space available for fuel. The new aircraft was named Tu-160. After confirming the shape of the aircraft, it's time to work on the interior. Pilots no longer need to exert force on the control stick. A gentle movement of the wrist will provide the aircraft with feedback. There are hundreds of digital computers on the Tu-160 alone. They control everything about the aircraft, from the flight attitude to settings for cruise missile guidance parameters. This is an aircraft that combines all of the Soviet Union's top technologies. After 6 years of development, the Tu-160 completed its first flight on December 18, 1981. At that time, it had not yet been painted in its signature all-white livery. After a successful first flight, the Tu-160 entered mass production. It used the highest level of manufacturing technology in the Soviet Union. This included the use of various composite materials and titanium. It is not an exaggeration to say that the Tu-160 is a revolutionary aircraft for Soviet aviation. The nose of the Tu-160 is equipped with radar known to NATO as the clamshell. This radar has long-range detection capabilities for land, sea, and air. It can conduct terrain mapping. The fuselage can be divided into the cockpit, 2 centralized weapon bays, the fixed-wing section, a central wing beam for adjusting the variable sweep wings, and the engine section. The rear of the aircraft is fitted with a braking parachute for landing. It also features the Baikal onboard self-defense system. This system detects and jams ground-to-air missile radars. In emergencies, it can launch flares. A heat detection system is located at the tail. It detects aircraft approaching from behind. During landing, 3 X-shaped parachutes deploy to reduce landing distance. In normal flight, the wings remain fully extended for increased lift. At high speeds, the wings are swept back. The boundary layer control at the wing roots is raised. This improves the lift-to-drag ratio during high-speed flight. Since the Tu-160 frequently conducts long-duration missions, to enhance pilot comfort, the aircraft includes a restroom and kitchen. When tired, you can brew a cup of hot tea. The Tu-160 is powered by 4 Kuznetsov NK-32 turbofan engines. These are the strongest engines ever installed on a military aircraft in the Soviet Union. In afterburner mode, they can produce up to 25 tons of thrust. 4 engines provide a total thrust of 100 tons. This allows a maximum takeoff weight of 275 tons. The fuel tanks are located at the front and rear of the fuselage and in the wings. They can hold a total of 171 tons of fuel. To enhance engine performance, the aviation kerosene used in the B-1 is mixed with nitrogen. This is also why it produces brown exhaust. The 4 engines are located in 2 pods under the wings. The intakes have adjustable flaps. This design is similar to that of the B-1. The B-1 was designed for Mach 2 performance at high altitude. Both the exhaust nozzles and air inlets are adjustable. However, the B-1 lowered the maximum speed to Mach 1.25 to prioritize low-altitude penetration. The variable air inlets would reflect more radar, achieving better stealth. This approach was eliminated in the B-1, replaced by fixed air inlets. From a paint scheme perspective, the B-1 must operate at high altitude for long durations. The white color helps it blend with the clouds. It also reflects sunlight to reduce overheating from prolonged exposure. In contrast, the B-1 focuses on low-altitude missions. The dark gray paint scheme enhances concealment against the ground. Its coating also has better radar wave absorption capabilities. So from the initial intended use, the Tu-160 and the B-1 are designed similarly and have similar appearances. But their specific primary mission objectives differ significantly. The B-1 has higher requirements for penetration capabilities, allowing it to drop bombs right at the doorstep. In contrast, the Tu-160 emphasizes the ability to launch cruise missiles from a standoff distance. Its main weapon is the Kh-55 cruise missile. It can carry smaller nuclear warheads, featuring a unique aerodynamic design. The missile is equipped with a turbofan engine that ejects upon launch. The wings and tail will also extend, and it adopts a low-altitude terrain-following flight method. The altitude is maintained below 100 meters, and the speed is at 850 kilometers per hour. After launch, it will immediately lower its altitude to hug the water's surface. Upon entering land, the terrain contour matching guidance system will be activated. The radar will scan the terrain and compare it with the stored terrain data. This allows it to achieve high-precision strikes on targets. The range of the Kh-55 reaches up to 2,500 kilometers. Combined with low-altitude penetration systems, this missile's power is truly terrifying. Each of the two internal bays of the Tu-160 houses a rotating launch platform. Each platform can carry 6 Kh-55 missiles. It can also carry freefall bombs, and the bays can hold up to 40 tons of munitions. Such impressive performance thrilled the Soviet Air Force. They intended to produce 100 Tu-160s to establish a formidable fleet of strategic bombers. However, after producing just 35 aircraft, the Soviet Union collapsed. The plan for 100 bombers vanished. Of the 35 remaining, 19 were based in Ukraine and rightly belonged to them. In 1998, under U.S. pressure to reduce Soviet nuclear arms, Ukraine destroyed 11 Tu-160 bombers. The remaining 8 were used to offset gas debts during the 1999 Russia-Ukraine talks. They were sold to Russia. Russia promptly started modernizing the Tu-160. In 2006, the first fully upgraded Tu-160 entered service. The Tu-160 then became active globally. It flew to Venezuela and patrolled the Caribbean region, participated in various air shows, allowing the public to closely examine the Tu-160. Also flew over Red Square during the Moscow Victory Day parade. On September 30, 2015, the Tu-160 began its first combat mission. The Syrian government requested military support from Russia to combat rebel militias in the Islamic State. All 3 types of Russian strategic bombers were dispatched. The Tu-160 and Tu-95 launched dozens of Kh-101 cruise missiles over the Mediterranean, achieving long-range precision strikes. The Tu-20 dropped freefall bombs into Syria. This operation was a perfect display of Russian bombers' power. Following this, Defense Minister Shoigu announced they would commence production of the upgraded Tu-160, the Tu-160M2. The modified version is said to have low observable coating, new avionics, electronic devices, a glass cockpit, communication and control systems, and many new weapons. The first Tu-160M had its maiden flight in January 2022. This is how the Tu-160 White Swan was born. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.